Welcome to tonight's Green Living Workshop about gardening for pollinators. My name is Avery Casas, and I am a conservation educator here at the town of Okotoks. The town of Okotoks acknowledges the original stewards of this land that we know and call Treaty 7 territory, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy First Nations, the Kainai, Siksika, and Piikani. The Stoney Nakoda First Nations, which includes the Bearspaw, Chiniki, Goodstoney, and the Dene First Nation of Tsuut'ina, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. We vow to continue honoring and respecting the Indigenous people's sacred and traditional ways of life, and will carry on this special relationship with the land so that generations to come can enjoy, use, and live off the land as their ancestors did. We honor and respect the space, the water, the animals, and all the beings who have a spirit and have been here long before us. So tonight we are very lucky to be joined by Joanna from the Calgary Horticultural Society. She will be discussing practical gardening techniques to attract and support bees, butterflies, and other essential pollinators. So Joanna is the Community Hubs Coordinator at the Alex Community Food Center and the Community Engagement Coordinator with the Calgary Horticultural Society. Along with her deeply rooted passion for promoting green spaces across Calgary's diverse communities, she's also an avid gardener and landscape designer and consultant. Joanna owns and operates Inhabit Landscape Design and Consultation, which specializes in incorporating food plants and drought-tolerant plants into residential and community landscapes. Her work keeps her in close relationship with the land, where she finds joy in helping others create gardens that thrive in Southern Alberta's ever-changing and unique climate. So we'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. If you do have a question during, feel free to raise your hand. And for those of you who are joining us online, feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that we address them towards the end. So with that, I will now hand it over to Joanna to get us started.
Thank you. Thanks. Oh, that's a lot. Yes. All right, we're going to talk creepy crawlies tonight. I hope you're ready for that. I also specialize in deer proofing your garden. So I know I'm in the heart of deer issues in Okotoks. All right, we're going to try this. Never done a clicker before, so we'll go with this. Yeah, so I'll start by saying, I think I was saying to you, I'm a fall on my face kind of gardener, but I just keep getting back up. I can't quit it. I love gardening, and I love building community around gardening because it just brings so much joy and inspiration into my life, and I see it happen before my eyes with participants in classes, people new to Calgary, people with tons of knowledge, needing to adapt it to our crazy climate here. Even if you move throughout the city or just out of the city, it's so different. We have these crazy microclimates across our region. And so there's always something to learn. There's always a challenge, and there's always something to learn. So today we're going to learn about pollinators, but we'll just really loosen up our notion of what pollinators are. So a little bit, I also mentioned too, I'm going to be a little bit preachy in the beginning, and then I'll quit it. But you'll get the notion that I'm not one for synthetics. So I really love to turn to Mother Nature and watch her cycles and observe. It means being patient and kind of always being pushed to the brink of like, oh, I really want to spray something or do something. I really want to get in there and change the situation I'm looking at, whether it's like aphid infestation or ants upturning your new seedlings or something. And there are some sort of more organic, naturally informed ways of dealing with that, and that's what I employ in my gardening, and that's what I consult for. That's how I counsel people to address their issues as well. And it's mainly because, like, here we see a full cycle of the salad buffet that bugs can be. These are aphids, and they're hiding out under the leaf where they are more protected. But then here's this beautiful ladybug that loves to eat those aphids. So if I were to come along and decimate those aphids, then I would also lose my ladybugs. So I also, I'll just show my age a little bit, but my father, who had a big part in bringing me into the natural world and gardening and kind of inspiring me to go down the path that I did with my career. He was born in 1933, and he remembers running behind trucks that were spraying DDT because they just didn't know any better. and it was like snow. So he'd just get on his bike, and when they come through and do the orchards, they'd pass through town, through the residential area, and the kids would all be cheering, and they'd spray the kids too. So we cringe and we're like, what? But in my time studying at Michigan State University, we did soil testing all across campus, and it's one of the oldest state universities in the U.S. Before it became a college campus, it was orchard country, and before that, it was beautiful old growth forest. But humans got in there and started growing orchards. And every soil test that we took came back with DDT in it. So, and that was 1996 to 1998. And so they're spraying well before that, but these chemicals persist. So we might jump to and want to do something in the moment, but we should remember that there are chemicals that really don't wash out. And we're finding cool ways to sort of remediate some of that, but it's way better to be proactive than reactive. And yeah, I don't know, my dad lived to be 88, so I don't know if the DDT helped preserve him or took him out, but we know better now. And if you've ever read or heard of Rachel Carson, read her book, A Silent Spring, it talks all about the use of sides, which like pesticide, fungicide, herbicide, insecticide. These, if it ends in side, it's like homicide. It does mean ending a life. It does mean murder, literally. So we have to really, really think long and hard before we choose that magic bullet. Mother Nature never has like the quick and easy way. So we're always looking. A lot of questions I get in gardening talks and classes, people want to know, like, what can I do to do this thing? And it'll just be like 10 minutes of my life and then it's done. Never works that way. The better answer is to be patient and slow and suffer just a little bit longer. So yeah, but if you want to know more about that stuff, the book Silent Spring is a good one to start with, because when we eliminate some of our smaller relatives, really, then the whole food chain on up suffers, right on up to us and other keystone species. But yeah, everything is interconnected. So we have to remember that when we're out. These are the magic bullets, the silver bullet answers, and this is something that you can see walking into any big box store. And yes, sometimes we have to turn to this when we don't want ants in our pantry or something like that. But when you're out in nature, in a balanced ecosystem, yeah, breathe deeply. It just feels better. This is unadulterated nature, and yes, there are things that look like a population explosion that may or may not unsettle us as gardeners. But try and embrace this like natural thing. Let's just say you're hiking along the trail and you don't have to worry that there's a swarm of mosquitoes or a whole bunch of aphids on the wild plants around you, because there's an answer on its way. And I'll go into kind of that cycle, what that looks like, the timeline around that. I always show a little bit of my own journey. So this is my front yard about 11 years ago. I had rented for 7 years, so my little gardener soul was withering and dying because I couldn't garden in our rental. And then we moved into our place in Southern Calgary, South Calgary, and inherited spruce tree, quackgrass, and some crumbling bricks that thank goodness I was on mat leave, so I got to work right away and got hustling on my landscape. Fairly non-diverse landscape, but the cool thing was, as I started to claw back some of that quackgrass and decide, I'm really glad we were house poor, because I probably would have cut that spruce tree down. But look, it's young, it's healthy. Yes, it breeds a great crop of squirrels every year that rampage my garden in the backyard, but that's part of it. They were there before I was. They're going to be there long after, as long as that tree's there. And I did start to notice things. So me bulldozing in there, I'm going to change everything, make it just the way I want it, sort of work within my budget, use natural methods, all this stuff. Along in here in the front of the wall, I noticed, especially in the hot, sunniest part of the day, this is south facing, there were little bees coming and going from here. And so I kind of just skirted around them. I didn't bother them. I unstacked all those rocks. It was a great workout all summer. But I left that area alone, and I'm really glad I did because they're still there. So I rebuilt the rock wall and replanted it. So this is about 5 years in. The first year, there's a lot of mulch to look at because I was very budget minded. So I just went and got lots of plants on sale at the end of the season. But the plants I was looking for were things that could handle, we live right by Fish Creek, so probably a lot of similar things that Okotoks gardeners and homeowners deal with. We have deer, we have jackrabbits, we have coyotes, we have pheasants, we have bobcats, we have like this whole outdoor plethora of amazing wildlife. I have landscape clients that swear to me they don't have deer. And I'm like, I don't care where you live in the city, you definitely have deer coming to your property. I spend most of my workday in Forest Lawn, which is right on a really busy 17th Avenue on the east side. And somebody said, oh, we don't get deer up here. And like 3 p.m. that day, going out to the parking lot, there's a white-tailed deer walking right through asphalt parking lot, right near like road construction. This was like 6 years ago, and I was like, we got deer. I'm rarely home, so my garden needs to look nice without me. And I'm super impressed by Okotoks. Airdrie's joined on, but I think the first year that Okotoks employed the water restrictions, I was looking up stats. The population down here grew by 40%. So that's a lot of Calgarians coming down and like looking for a nice lifestyle down here. Other people moving, obviously, but population goes up 40%, water usage goes down by half. That's really impressive to me. And I think Calgarians are a bit spoiled, privileged. We got our first restrictions last summer. So a long time coming. Very glad that it did, because I was ready for it. I haven't watered my garden off the hose for 2 years. So I got everything established. That takes 2 to 3 years. And I chose smart plants that really, the deer don't like eating salvia. They don't bother. Now there's other things in here. This is an older picture. I have native cactus. They leave the sedum alone. They don't like the wormwood. I've got haskaps, ornamental grasses, a lot of things that you see kind of even in the median here in Okotoks. You guys are really smart gardeners down here. It's such a beautiful relief to just even driving. I can like, yep, you're doing it right. Awesome. But I chose plants that thrive on low water. They don't get chewed down by animals, and they are suited to the site. So that's kind of number one, you create a habitat for animals. So this picture beforehand, not a lot to draw in diverse visitors. Except my son loved it. It was like his mini soccer field, and I just like dig wherever you want, make as many holes as you want because it's all coming out. Yeah. But here you can see there's different textures, there's different things blooming at different times. This is very important. It's like if we're setting the table for guests, you notice when the food runs out, and then you're kind of scrambling like, oh, okay, I'll put out some more peanuts or something. Like you always have something on the table, and that's so important to attract pollinators. They need a reason to come over. So they're not that different than us. They want something to eat. They want to feel safe where they are. They need a drink of water. Those are your basics. You guys can go home. That's it. But for us, to make this easy for us, we can also think of those things like drought tolerance, right plant, right place. These are all plants that love full sun. They thrive in high heat, strong winds. So I haven't watered in 2 years. Yes, I do have some rain barrel watering cans around a little bit, but most of the rainwater I collect is in the back. All of it is in the backyard. So it's a pain in the butt to haul it all the way around to the front. So I tend not to do much. Somebody said this garden is like the cobbler whose kids have no shoes. Like it's got to thrive without me. And now it is more grown together. These plants have become more established. and it's thriving quite well. And this is about where my little mason bees live. They are leafcutter bees. They fly in and out of here. They're little solitary. They don't create like a hive like a honeybee. But so aside from that spruce tree, the quackgrass, and one juniper in the backyard, there's a rose bush in the backyard. That's all I got. And that's kind of good as a gardener because I was like, okay, that's almost a clean slate. But I noticed the first summer I lived there, holes in my rose leaves, perfectly cut holes. Not like just some random caterpillar working its way through and shredding everything. And I was like, this is interesting. Like somebody had taken a hole punch all around on the leaves of my rose. And through just observing, not meddling, not doing the human thing and be like, well, let me get in there and tinker and fix stuff and do stuff. I just watched. I let those bees be. I had no idea what they're up to. No idea. I just thought, okay, they're there. I don't want to get stung. Leaving them alone. And then, you're out working and you're kind of sweaty and salty and inevitably one lands on you. So you kind of get to looking at them and they're like getting salt off your skin or whatever they're doing, right? Little sweat bees. And then I'd see them like, okay, now I know, okay, we've met one another. I know what you look like now. My name's Joanna. Nice to meet you. Off it goes. And then I'd see that same little bee on my rose bush. I'm like, okay, making connections slowly. And this is like over like 2-3 seasons. I'm not that quick of a learner. And then I'm seeing like, okay, then one flies past looking like it's carrying like it's a witch on a broom. And it had this perfect green circle between its legs and it's flying along like a rudder. I was like, now I know who you are. So then, okay, I can work with that. I start researching what is this little bee? Why is it taking these perfect little circles out of my rose bush? And then I started to see circles out of my haskap leaves. I'm like, what's going on? So then I learned that's how they plug that's how they keep their larvae safe in their little tunnels where they lay eggs. So cool. So if I would have just been like, bugs, and sprayed them, I would have missed out on that whole interaction. And we're friends now. And they've been there the whole time I've lived there. So it's neat to see them thriving. This is the backyard. So again, working with sort of a clean slate. Well, it was all rock and there's a hot tub and broken things in there and I cleared it all out. Again, low budget. This was the deck that was all over the back side of the house, failing, flopping and screws up and everything. So is a cedar deck. So I repurposed the wood, turned it into raised beds. I didn't have enough money for soil at all. So I just started composting in place. So there's layers of mostly leaves and then which I scavenged from my neighbors because I have a spruce tree. That's all I got. So I got to know everyone in the neighborhood because I ripped out my front lawn and they thought I was crazy and I'm out collecting bags. So I highly encourage you to be like the little bees and go do your things throughout the neighborhood with permission, of course. But I started to layer in and make compost in place. I was doing some kitchen scraps right in place and letting it age and break down and all that. And then when I had the money, I topped it all with good soil. And then this is what it looked like the first year. So that's it at the end of the first summer of active gardening. And again, if I'm a pollinator, I'm seeing some pretty fun stuff in there. And I, of course, again, I'm way more active in my backyard because I'm growing food there. But just like in the front yard, a lot of things kind of get neglected. So you can see like my lettuce has gone to seed. The dill, I lost it. The dill just went to flower. Sunflowers, I didn't plant those, but they're there. Some bird dropped the seed or they came in somehow and I just let them go. And just out of sheer laziness, that's probably my best teacher. I'm just like, I just can't be bothered. I don't have time. Well, the sunflowers draw in the most beautiful bumblebees I've ever seen, and they hang out there on cold nights. Like they'll spend the night on the sunflowers, which is really nice to wake up and see them there. And come to find out, the dill flower, it's a great trap crop. So does anyone know what a trap crop is? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I didn't know what one was. And I was like, well, this works great. And then somebody was like, oh, yeah, it's a trap crop. And I'm like, thought that was a kind of music or something. But so yeah, so they end up being almost black on the stems and underneath the yellow petals with aphids every summer. So all the aphids are like, woohoo, party in the dill. And they leave everything else alone. I don't see aphids really anywhere else. And, you know, in the beginning, when you don't know these things, you're like, am I attracting more aphids because I'm letting my dill go to flower? Or am I distracting them? So I still don't know. But for the most part, they leave things alone. And then I thought too, like, well, I can't just grow food. I like to grow flowers. I like to grow things that are easy to care for. So there's some bee balm in the back against the wall. There's some borage, which is a beautiful self-seeding annual. And they all have purposes for me. Like even the bee balm, I use that in soap making and salves and stuff like that. I'm always pushing myself. I'm always trying a different plant that I've never grown before. I was super excited my first year gardening, so I planted some tobacco. I'm born and raised in Calgary, so I wasn't sure how that would do, and it did spectacular. The leaves on that were like the size of elephant ears. So I was able to try that out and see what that was like. And then 3-4 years later, it seems like a lot of people are embracing growing tobacco and growing medicine gardens and using it in a ceremonial way. So important cultural plants, trying to work in more, it's either my raised beds, but I'm also in other areas, I'm working in native plants. This is very important when we're encouraging native pollinators. We want to give them their favorite food. So that works the best. Yeah, and then too, I had put down rocks at the end of that first fall that we lived there. All winter it was just bare soil and rocks. And then I planted in the spring, I planted creeping red thyme. And that is what happened after one season. It just spread like crazy and I didn't do anything to the soil. It is gravelly, sand, hard packed. It's like basically an alley in there because it had a deck and a hot tub over it. So some plants don't need babying. So it's kind of music to a lot of people's ear because you think, oh, now I'm gonna have to rip out all that poor soil and bring in compost and it's gonna break my back and my budget and all this. But a lot of plants, especially pollinator attracting plants, native plants, they are not used to compost rich soils. That's not what our native soils are like. So clay, most of us have clay. Some of us even have like hard pan, sandstone, mudstone. A lot of those soils are actually full of nutrients. They just need organics to get in and break it up a bit. And the roots from native plants will get in like no other and access those nutrients and break up some of that hard packed, compacted soil. So I leave my high quality compost rich soil for my raised beds for my finicky annual veggies. And the rest is literally just through sheer like poorness of energy and money, but it works out great. And then in the back, I had a friend who was keeping bees in Nanton and she had a swarm and she let me take the swarm and try out top bar beekeeping, my top bar hive. And so that was super fun. So I just did everything my first summer of living there. I was like 7 years of like drought and I get to do everything. So I planted one of everything. I went crazy. I had bees. I had a newborn baby. It was nuts. But I learned a lot because I failed a lot. A lot of stuff just got away from me, of course, because I overdid it. But don't be afraid of that learning curve. It's really steep at first. Yeah.
What's the name of that ground cover again?
Red creeping thyme. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, in the springtime, as it's just barely forming leaves, it's already flowering. So in the springtime, this is pink. It's like a pink carpet, and it is swarming, absolutely swarming with honeybees. And I wish I could figure out where they live, because I don't know where they come from, but my compost is in the back. And this is the back of the house. I literally tiptoe. It takes me like 10 minutes because I'm like, okay, safe. Safe, because the bees are everywhere. And they're not just on the flowers. They're like under, inside. They're crawling all around. So there's woolly thyme. There's pink elfin thyme. There's all different kinds of creeping thyme. It's a beautiful ground cover that's drought tolerant, attracts pollinators, spreads really quick. Yeah. Nope, they're not culinary time. There is hardy culinary time too. So you can find that. The flowers aren't quite as prolific, but it smells amazing. So if you scuff it up, you're just like, oh, I want to cook chicken. So the best thing to do is, again, start with the soil. So if you're planting tender plants, annuals, perennials that aren't quite native here, you will need to feed the soil because our clay soils are very easy to turn into almost concrete. And so new plants have a hard time getting established in that. I like to say, we have a little saying around the Hort Society, it takes about 3 years for a plant to decide if it wants to do anything, and once you get it out of the pot and into the ground. So it'll sleep for the first year. It's just like what I should have done in my yard. I should have just done nothing for a year, settled, watched how things work, see where the sun goes, how the wind, all the stuff. But I was very excited. So sleep the first year, creep the second year. It looks like sleeping to us, but it's a lot of activity underground. Those roots are starting to creep out and find what they need. And if they find what they need, then leap in the third year. You start to see something above ground. So sleep 1 year, creep the next year, leap the third year if you're lucky. That's if you haven't transplanted it again, moved it around somewhere, if it hasn't been stressed by animal activity, overwatering, underwatering, yada, yada, yada. So like 3 to 5 years to get a plant established. If you start in the soil, and I would recommend home composting. That's the best way to do it. You have a wonderful family-owned business just south of here, Western Canada Garden Soil. I don't try to plug too many businesses, but they're awesome, worth every penny, competitive prices. They make their soil. It's a really well-rounded product. They give a ton of guidance and customer support, and their delivery charges very nice. They can do split dumps so that you can get mulch and soil or 2 different kinds of soil. But the very best soil is one you make yourself because it's got all of the things that are already naturally there being kept there. So it's less waste, it's less energy expended. And again, it's a good workout. So if you can feed your soil and you start with healthy soil, everything else will flourish from there. It's just like us. If we're trying to figure out a health issue, it almost always connects to diet. We wouldn't just say, oh, I better go get more supplements. No, we're going to address our diet. We're going to look at what are we putting into it. So the soil is really where to start with that. And just as I talked about in my front yard, this is not my front yard, but plant selection is everything. So if you're throwing hostas out in the full south exposure, hard beating sun, they're not going to thrive, right? And you can almost always tell plants are always giving us clues. They're always talking to us. The natural world is always talking to us if we can just learn the language. So hostas, shade-loving plants, usually have bigger leaves, or their foliage is what is the draw, because most plants need 6 to 8 hours to really want to throw out flowers, even shade-tolerant plants. So when they don't get that, they just make their leaves prettier because the flowers are more minimal. They're more insignificant, I guess. So right plant, right place. Again, like in my front yard, I show that picture because I have things in there that they thrive on just the precipitation in the air. That's it. That's all that's needed. And they still throw up flowers. They still bring in the pollinators. Site layout's really important. If you're so lucky to be starting from scratch or reworking a mature landscape, it's really important to have a plan. So I did what I guide people. I didn't do what I guide people to do when I moved in. I was like, yes, everything, everywhere. Yes, I was so excited. And I didn't really draw a plan. I had like scrap napkin ideas. And then by August, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, what am I doing? I have to redo things now. Why did I do this? It's like I completely forgot everything that I tell my clients to do, but start with a plan. Maybe the first year you're literally only going to get this part done. Or maybe not even that. Maybe you're going to do your patio because you're going to put your budget there and do all your hardscaping so you don't have to tramp through new sod and all that. But you know what you can do year by year by year. And you have this plan that you can come back to. And plan for mature sizes. I can't reiterate that enough. It's like getting a Great Dane puppy and thinking it's going to stay that size forever. Mugo pines, junipers, I hope they teach us lessons all the time because they come like these cute little bundt cakes in their pots. And then they get to be like the tag is telling you something. Read the tag, take off about like a foot or two because those plants go all over the country. So what they do in Nova Scotia is really different than what they're going to do here. But yeah, if it says spreads to 7 feet, it's going to get big. So plan for that. And yes, it looks like when you put them in, like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of mulch. This looks like so sparse. Plant pumpkins, plant something that spreads, just fill it with cool annuals. And it doesn't have to be $800 of, petunias. It can be, I planted pumpkins in my front yard the first year I lived there. I met all the neighbors. All the neighbor kids came by and I was like, have a pumpkin, take a pumpkin. But in the meantime, those leaves kept the weeds down because they're big. All the squirrels came down and nibbled on the pumpkins, so we got to know one another. They didn't require a lot of water because I wasn't really growing pumpkins to harvest. I was just growing the greens. And then I had a ton of material to put in my compost at the end of it all. So there are a lot of uses for that. And then it was like a $2 packet of seeds. So water is everything. When you're planting a garden, it doesn't mean you need a lot of water. It just means the water you have, steer it in the right way. Slow it down as much as you can before it leaves your property and make sure that it's diverted to safe places. You don't want this going off towards your neighbor's foundation or yours. This was a rain garden, just super simple. I love helping people shrink their lawns. It's one of my favorite things to do as a landscape designer. And this is so simple. They still have a lawn. The property line is here somewhere, and it's nice because you can't really see that. But they have this issue where the downspout comes down and it was just making basically a skating rink on their driveway or just washing out. Like that's not even a foot. There goes all the rainwater. So this even backs up more now. They hadn't changed their downspout, but we came in, this is like 6 feet by 6 feet. It's not really that big of a project, but we put these boulders in, the downspout comes in behind the boulders now, slows way down when it hits the rock and settles into some of these natural perennial plants that take that water and use it. And when it's dry, they're still okay because they're drought tolerant. But yeah, that's an important way. You always have to start with water. Where does water come from? How much do you get? How can you slow it down? How can you use it? The best place to store water is in the soil, in the roots. So if you can redirect downspouts, have your rain barrels situated in a place where you're going to water frequently, even shape your land a little bit to incorporate berms and swales. So swales are low spots like troughs, sort of dry creek beds would be an example. Berms are like a bit of a raised mounded area. So you can direct the water through the sort of mini slough, and it can hit the edge of your berm where you have plants growing, and it'll just sponge up the water. And it's not that hard or too technical to do. This is a good example. So this is a side yard in Vulcan. It gets a lot of shade. Again, it's all shade from like here back, and then from here over, that was a shady day or a cloudy day, but from here over, it's full sun. So it's like east-west as the wind goes, and it was just sort of a storage area, but we reworked it into a dry creek bed. It looks wet because we sprayed it down with the hose before we took off, but all the rainwater from the front of the house would whoosh through their side yard. It was causing damage on their neighbor's house. It had rotted out fence posts. And this was just sort of a storage area, you don't do too much on the side of the house. It's just sort of a transition area. But now they go out and they have their coffee in the morning and they are seeing so much activity. There's a lot of birds that come through now. And so all this water feeds these plants that need minimal watering anyway. It gets it safely back to the backyard. This dry creek bed covers a sleeved weeping tile set in washed rock. So it's all kind of engineered, real low-tech engineering to just get that water where it should be. But our pollinators, again, like I said earlier, they're just like us. They need water. Water is life. So we need to have these places where they can access water. Does anyone know what this is a picture of? Because you have it in your property. oyster shell scale. So to somebody who doesn't know what that is, it just looks like bark, doesn't it? Kind of looks like bark. Sort of these nubbly little bumps there. That's an insect. They're like barnacles. I know, striking fear in you. There's way more bugs that like we don't know. So that's like kind of exciting and kind of intimidating. But I didn't know what oyster shell scale was before I moved to Calgary. And then I started learning about the Peking cotoneaster hedges. People are like, why is it dying? Why it's not leafing out? So then you get in there, you scrape that with your thumbnail and they all kind of like flake off. You're like, what are these things? And then learning about their life cycles. If you were to come in and spray those, like you can tell by their design. I mean, just like I was born to change the time on clocks, apparently, and reach things off the top of the fridge. These guys are born to suck sap out of tree limbs and branches and to repel anything that hits them. Rainwater goes off, sprays go off. The only thing that may work is like an oil that would stick to them, but then it's going to rain and wash off anyway. So if you sprayed that, it's totally ineffective. You're just polluting the ground. That's all you're doing. So what do I do, Joanna? Tell me the silver bullet answer. You have to wait till they're coming out of the ground, hatching out of the ground, in their flying instar, before they become these little barnacle scales that we see like this. And that is like a 2-week window if you're lucky in the spring, and you actually have to know what they look like and you have to be out there every day looking for them. So, or you live with them. That's another option. You live with them. There's ways to treat, but anyway, if you're treating at the wrong time, completely ineffective and just raises frustration. So you have to learn about, first you have to identify what you're dealing with and then learn about their different life cycles in order to get in there and do something. Again, with the timing, these are aphids, yep. So they're super juicy and delicious if you're a ladybug. And a lot of predatory insects love them. They're like the rabbits of the mammal world. Like, why are rabbits around? I think they're pretty much to feed a lot of other predators. These guys are definitely a prey animal. They also are here to suck the sap out of plants, and they do that. But if I just came along and was like, God, these aphids are driving me crazy. I got to do something about them. Spray, spray, spray. Does anyone know what these little yellow things are? Ladybug eggs, yeah. So this looks like an infestation. This looks like damage to my plant. I'm getting upset about this. But if I just relax, that's the other thing. The other key to planning a resilient garden is relaxing. This is why we garden, to relax. Like, we have to remember that. They're just eggs. So they need time to hatch so that they can start to introduce themselves and what they're born to do, which is to eat these guys. So if I interrupt that, this is a bit more visual for you. I think I have arrows that come in. Okay, so this is the aphids. We just saw it's like high population on the prey animal. And maybe you've seen this in like high school biology. This is, I remember in the newspaper, Calgary was overrun with jackrabbits a few years back. Like, they're everywhere. I couldn't drive down the alley because I was like, okay, you guys, come on. They just run in front of the car. There'd be like 10 of them on my way to just get around the corner to the garage. I'm like, oh. And then, okay, so there's too many jackrabbits. What do we do about it? Or aphids, whatever it might be. The predators, the natural predators, so this is like where humans usually freak out and interject. But if we wait and let the predators come in, so the predator population is really low. So they're not doing a whole lot of overlapping. Prey population goes through a boom, which somehow triggers all these predators. There's a lot of food to eat. So then there's a lot more coyotes being born or a lot more ladybugs showing up. And it doesn't, this looks pretty and stuff, but it doesn't ever feel balanced. Like, we talk about Mother Nature and natural cycles and kumbaya, but this looks like hectic end of the world times. If you're just like, oh my gosh, we're overrun with this, but then now I hear coyotes howling like across the river valley all night long where I live. And so I'm thinking, yeah, we're probably reaching that point soon where we're going to have too many coyotes. And if too many coyotes, there's not enough rabbits or prey food to feed them, so their population starts to drop. And when their population drops, it's this overlapping but somewhat synced up cycle with the prey animals. And this is so true in the bug world as well. So again, I don't want to beat you over the head with this, and we do only have a little bit of time left, so I want to save room for questions and that. But this is what happens if I come out there and do something about it. If we have like a massive culling of whatever, or we come out and spray, our prey animals population drops to almost nothing, because the goal for a lot of gardeners is to kill something, wipe it out. I mean, there's even things called like whatever I don't know what they're, wipeout or whatever they call them. But if we do that, then we're essentially, it's that DDT spray again. We're wiping out so many other things that are connected to this prey population. And that prey population, we need it. We actually need the aphids in our garden. And this may keep me from getting hired to do talks anywhere, but if we don't have the mosquitoes, we don't have the songbirds. I tell my 12-year-old this all the time. He's like, why do we have these bugs, these flapping mosquitoes? And I'm like, because they feed so many other things. And those things are just as important and valid as we are, as the cool songbirds that we see, or the bats that we see swooping about. So we don't want to interject because we'll cause damage across the board. So there's that. Okay, so this is pretty basic high school biology, but we need bugs to get here, because once the pollen from the anther gets deposited on fuzzy legs or antenna or on some little body, it's eventually going to get up to the stigma, and that's like sticky usually. And this is the bees, the birds and the bees right here. So this is sex in a flower. Once the pollen gets there, it heads right down the pistil down to the ovary. And once that little ovary with its egg in there is pollinated, we get a fruit, or a squash, or a green bean, or a tomato, whatever it is. We get food, basically. But we get the next generation of that plant. So, I mean, that's why we want animals to visit our garden to begin with. So yeah, that's essentially what happens when these creatures come along. So whether it's an imported honeybee, or a native bee, or a lacewing, or an ant, mosquitoes are pollinators. I've even watched the dreaded cabbage butterflies, which I used to kill with a tennis racket like a mad woman in the backyard. And then I see, it's interesting, they actually go to my raspberries on the outside of my fence in the alley, and they're all over the flowers on my raspberries. And then that's cool. I like that. And then they come over the fence and they're all over my broccoli and kale and cabbage. And I don't really like that, but I think good, not so good. I'm not going to worry about any of it. I'm going to sit here and drink my iced tea and probably pick some caterpillars off my cabbage. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I want to run through some bugs before we're done, and then I think if that time is correct, I think we're pretty close to an hour here. So this is a really cool mimic. So this is actually a fly. So many people think they're bees, and so they're doing their job really well. They're camouflaged as bees so that they don't get eaten, because bees are not fun to eat if you're a predator of bees. So mimic, they hover a lot. They'll just like be that little fly that's like right there and you can't figure out what they're doing. But they're called syrphid flies or hover flies, and they're often really busy pollinating as well. They don't have stingers, they're technically a fly. So when you see them, get really curious about these little bee mimics, because they are out there doing a lot of work. As I said, the cabbage butterfly, not a super popular pollinator, and often a very pesty bug in our vegetable gardens. So I'm not saying let's attract them. In fact, I can't be bothered to grow cabbage anymore, because the amount of cabbage I want to use in my kitchen It's just prime real estate for other things. So I go to the farmer's market and I buy my bin of cabbage and I don't bother with it. If you are going to grow anything in the cabbage family, kale, arugula, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, you're going to want to get used to using a floating row cover. But these are pollinators. This little proboscis all curled up, that goes in to get nectar out of a flower. And when you're getting nectar out of a flower, you're rolling around in the pollen. And then you go to the next flower and you're actually pollinating. So I'm trying to get you to love the enemies a little bit. And then these guys, that's good food for beneficial insects. So those soft-bodied caterpillars that we try not to eat in our sauerkraut, that's great food for predatory bugs, like ground beetles and stuff like that. So there's a picture of floating row cover. It lets in sunlight and rain, but keeps some of the bugs out. Ground beetles, embrace them. So they are super noisy at night. I always like, man, do I have a ton of mice out here or what? Just sitting around the fire. And it's actually ground beetles, and they're great scavengers. They love those soft-bodied insects. They love to eat slugs, grubs, any little things that are like getting into your plants. So if you see these guys, they can be quite large. That's my son with one on his hand. Just let them be. They will kind of pinch and bite you. So that's another reason to let them be. But most often beetles, they're pretty big. They're like this size, and they're very active at night. So those are, again, not fantastic pollinators, but they support pollinators because they're eating other prey insects. There's me and my bees. Honeybees, I encourage you to really get into native bees. They're generally solitary, so they're not protecting a hive or making honey. So they're so docile. Like the bees, the leafcutter bees I told you about in my rock wall, they didn't mind me. They're still there. It's more than a decade they've been living in their little hole in the wall, and they're just awesome. Bumblebees, I think we have around 30 plus species of bumblebees in Alberta alone, and they're just so fuzzy and adorable. When you think about all of the pollination that leads to fruit production in our country alone, it's done mostly by native bees. So that's pretty cool to think. We always want to solve things as humans. I don't know what it is with us, but we always are like bringing in things and trying other things out. But really, it's the things that have been here all along that are the most effective. So try and encourage your native bee populations if you can. Look at how cute they are. They're just adorable. Often they're tiny or they're really beautifully colored. The bumblebees have different patterning in their coloring. So get to learn what they look like. Ants often will be farming aphids. So it's this weird sort of evil, not so evil relationship they have. They like the honeydew that the aphids secrete. So they're actually eating honey. They're eating like honeydew is just a nice way of saying aphid poop. But they eat it because ants are scavenging for something sweet. There's this urban myth that if you have peony buds, you'll see ants on them. And when I moved here, somebody said the ants massage the peony flowers open. And I was like, well, that is amazing. Like, wow, Mother Nature, this is cool. They're not. There's little bits of nectar that come out and they like that sweet stuff. So that's what they're doing. They're not out there like, come on, open up. But you'll see ants all over the garden, all over the place. And they like it dry and they like to dig. So if they're in a spot where you don't want them, make it wet and hard to dig. I've had trouble with some of them in my raised beds, and when I'm over there watering, I'm like, you know what, guys, I asked you to go, did the verbal invitation to get out, and you didn't listen to me, so I'm just going to flood you. And they do move on, and they might move on 2 feet over. You just do it again till you kind of like get them out. Ants are like bees. They have a queen, so if you can target the queen, or relocate the queen, you can relocate the whole colony, but they are actually doing good work in our gardens. Yeah. Yes. Under my raised beds, I put cardboard. So just enough to kill, if you live on an acreage, I would encourage you to put hardware cloth. It's a metal like mesh because of gophers and like rodents. I live in the city. They haven't found me there yet. So I was just worried about quackgrass getting through. So I put down really thick cardboard, like bike boxes, super thick, or like refrigerator boxes, just enough to like make sure that, yes, just regular carton is good. So it decomposes. Yeah, good question though. Landscape fabric in general, I stay away from unless I'm doing something with decorative stone. Otherwise, it's just totally interferes with with mulch. Mulch, there should be it should be touching the soil because it eventually is breaking down carbon into the soil. Other ways you can structurally encourage more pollinators and beneficial insects into your garden is to create little habitats for them. This is a birdhouse with a hole cut for chickadees or finches. So those guys help manage some of my insect issues. I made that, nothing ever moved in. I don't know, you can try it. I think it's better to like buy from a reputable solitary bee person. You can buy the larvae, you can buy the little house, you can monitor it. I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. You can do some companion planting or smart planting. So marigolds repel most pest bugs because they just smell so strongly, but they also draw in some pollinators. A note on flowers, we can get double flowers and we can get single flowers. So single flowers, they're pretty, they're almost like a disc, and you can see all that like the stamen and the pollen where the bee would land. Double flowers, a lot like this, are super frilly, and it's harder to find that center. So double flowers, double blooms are often less encouraging to pollinators. So they're super showy to us, but they're less inviting. And then garden cleanup. This is delphinium. Leave it as long, be the last one on your block to do it. That's your challenge this year, is like middle to end of June. That's when I clean up old stuff in the garden. And usually I just chop it. I chop it fine and leave it where it is. Yeah. Or don't clean up at all. Be a little bit wilder. Plant plants that don't need a lot of cleanup. And whatever I do kind of pull from my garden, it ends up in the compost. So it's not going that far away. But I leave it over winter because that little tube right there is perfect habitat for bugs, and they really, really need it. They need a place to hang out and be protected through our harsh winters. Here's a list. I think you guys are all getting a copy of this, so don't feel like you have to quickly write things down. But these are my favorites. I mentioned a bunch of these. I've got a lot of these. I'm friends with all of these plants. We grow well together in my home garden and a lot of the community garden spaces I work in. Just get to know them. Again, right plant, right place. A lot of them are ground covers. Some of them will drop seeds and be everywhere. Some of them are easier to control than others. But these ones really bring in the flying creepy crawlies, which you want in your garden. This one is a cousin of the pasque flower, which is a native. So often in our wilder areas, pretty soon, we'll start to see the little lavender. They call them prairie crocus, even though it's not a crocus. But this one, I never know if I say this right. The variety name is Rote Glock, I think. It's the Calgary Horticultural Society official flower. And I have it growing in my yard, and I'm expecting it to bloom anytime now. So that one I bought as a start already. So I bought that from a garden center. Come over, I'll give you some seeds. If I ever see seeds. I have 3 and they bloom and it snows and they bloom and they get buried in snow, and it's like, it's the first flower in my yard. And I always see bees in there. They're always, yeah, they're before dandelions. And so, yes, that's awesome. And then leave some dandelions. Live in the stress, be comfortable in the stress moment, because it means things are changing. Something is changing. You've got the stuff bubbling up and there's anxiety and stress, but you're learning something, and it's not static. It is a dynamic thing and it will pass. But this is how you can get in touch with me if you want to ask questions or have me come look at your yard or just stay in touch and share your progress. But yeah, so I think we're getting close to time, but questions, if anyone has questions, I'm not sure if you guys are monitoring online questions, chat questions, but everyone's welcome to. Sure. Comments, questions, stories.
Questions for like I just want to for new things right now, but
Congrats.
I want to put in a vegetable garden and flower garden at the same time.
Yeah.
My problem is so we have so much wormwood,
Okay.
the wormwood absentium, and so the previous owner never really took care of it. And last year I applied because there's so much, and I didn't know until I found out by doing research what it was. We asked somebody to apply a herbicide, but this year I don't want to have to do that because I want to have an organic stuff. So like what we I used to live in Calgary, and I used to use the cardboard. So you use a really thick cardboard to
Multiple layers. And then I think of like making a lasagna. So it is, you can look up lasagna gardening. Create an edge, first of all. So define where you want your bed to be and make it accessible. So don't make it like too wide because you're going to be walking through it then. So make it a size that you can get into and out of easily. So you're not compacting the soil. And then lots of cardboard and wet it down so that it kind of adheres and forms to the lay of the land. And then top that with mulch. Doesn't matter what kind really, just chipped whatever, just to hold it in place. If you want to garden right away, start to layer soil, mulch, soil, mulch, soil.
I have a problem with gopher.
Okay, so
yeah, it's better to put the cardboard first and then put some sort of something on top of it to deter.
Yeah, the gophers are going to come up. So you have to actually physically stop the gophers from coming up, and you'd use like a wire cloth. So it's called hardware cloth.
So wire cloth and then cardboard, would that be okay?
Yeah, and they may even still kind of come up and come over the sides. So you want to think about, gophers are really tricky. Does anyone else deal with gophers in their gardens? I'm seeing some knowing. You got a cat? So predators. Also, wow. So, oh, neat. Yeah, the cycle of life right before your eyes. Also, and again, it's that slow answer, which people, they want to know right away, how do I get rid of gophers? But the slow, how does Mother Nature do it? When there's a balance, like gophers belong here, but so do great horned owls, so do hawks, so do weasels. So yeah, so try and encourage, look at what draws in those animals, probably habitat like trees to nest in. Yeah, so.
Well, weasels come in just because there's also like this winter mole just like front yard.
The other thing I notice, and I don't because I live in the city, I do have clients that I have a client here off of in DeWinton and off Dunbow Road, and then coming in towards Okotoks. She lives kind of on that first ridge. She deals with gophers. Not every year is the same. So what I noticed was like the first 2 years that I gardened, I was like, man, this is awesome. I am so good at this because nothing had found me yet. And then by year 3, 4, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't want anyone to see my garden because it was overrun with bugs and all kinds of animals. And then I got smart and I sort of tried to rodent proof my compost pile. That was like step number 1. And then learning more about the life cycles of the different bugs I was seeing, and trying to plant plants that were attracting things that would naturally control them helped a lot. So I do a lot of volunteering and consulting with a group called Land of Dreams. It's an urban agriculture farm space just east of Stony Trail between Pagan and Glenmore trails. And they have gophers like crazy. I'm like, you need trees. And it's an empty field that they're growing vegetables in. I was just like, holy cow, you got your work cut out for you. So they need habitat. The trees will attract predators to nest in. Yeah. And then maybe think about getting a cat. That's true. Yep. So yeah, anytime we make a change, the ripples go farther than we know. So yeah, maybe just borrow his cat. I hope that helps. Yeah.
We've got an online question.
Sure.
So what can I do with creeping bellflower that loves to take over everything?
Oh my gosh, you guys are asking the toughest questions. Gophers and creeping bellflower, move. No. Okay, creeping bellflower, actually it's a lot like how you would deal with gophers. So you have to smother it. Flamethrowers don't work. Digging it up doesn't work. Like you literally have to smother it and repeat smother it. So it's not like, all right, that's good. I'm done with my cardboard and all that. That's the only way I've seen that's somewhat effective. Creeping bellflower is tenacious.
That yellow one?
It's purple. That's a clematis. So creeping bellflower is pretty, and that's how it got here. And we didn't know any better. It just came with folks that were like, "This is a pretty flower."
Yeah.
The good thing to know is it's a useful plant. You can eat it. So think about the plant's life cycle. Don't let it flower because then it's too late. It's already heading into its next generation. So keep it from flowering, keep it from being able to photosynthesize. So give it no sunlight. Give it, if the worst, I mean, like if it's at its worst point, it's flowering, you don't know what to do, at least cut the flower heads off and tie them up in a black bag and throw them in the garbage. Silver lining, so the more I work in this realm of gardening and growing food and being sort of land stewardship with habitat promotion and all this, what I love, my latest and probably for the rest of my life passion is creating soil. And once you get into composting, it's amazing. And I learned last summer about thermophilic composting. So it's where it's called hot composting. And you're following a certain formula of inputs. And so you need this certain amount of so you're working with 50 buckets worth of, you just make the pile. It's not like I'm collecting kitchen scraps slowly over time. You have all your ingredients ready to go. And some of them are chopped greens. And guess what? We did a pile with chopped up creeping bellflower, roots, seeds, flowers, leaves, the whole plant. And that was our green input, so our nitrogen. And that pile got up to 70 plus degrees Celsius and totally killed all the seeds and the roots and everything. And we have good, awesome, healthy soil made from dead creeping bellflower. So that's pretty amazing. Like that would strike fear in any gardener's heart to put creeping bellflower in a compost pile because you're just propagating it then at that point. But look up hot composting. It's a little bit of a laborious process, but it's so satisfying to know that I made excellent soil out of something that's really hard to control. Yeah. So you have to smother it. Lasagna gardening, look that up. Solarization, that's another technique that some people have used with some success. It's creating a tarped area. Again, you're smothering it in a way. So yeah. Yep. So hot composting, you reach. Yeah, they're worth it. They're worth every penny. But just online folks and everyone in here, do not put creeping bellflower in a passive compost pile. That's my disclaimer. Okay. Yes.
Is there anything you can plant that would take out creeping bellflower?
Yeah. Then you're looking at something that is as tenacious as creeping bellflower. So it would be like snow on the mountain, sunflower, or dandelions. There's really like if you're going to plant something that spreads that would be maybe native, you'd have to give it a chance to get established. And then it would be a battle of wills. So it might be a neat. I don't think it's tough enough to outcompete creeping bellflower.
Can you put rhubarb leaves in a compost?
Yep, absolutely. Cool little tip about rhubarb. And I didn't know this right away. I was like, rhubarb, I love food plants, so we eat the stalk, right? And the leaves are high in oxalic acid. We don't eat those. You can mulch around the base of your plant with it, no problem, because it breaks down. We're not eating our compost. So the leaves are just a source of nitrogen when we compost them. So compost them if you want, the leaves, or steep them like tea and save that liquid. And that is a fantastic organic control for bug issues. So you literally just make rhubarb leaf tea and strain it and spray it on things like aphids, or you have too many aphids and you're just not patient enough or certain that ladybugs are coming. And it helps. Also, a jet spray of water is another good way. Like I get aphids all over my apple tree every year and it kind of drives me crazy. And I think, yeah, ladybugs are going to come in here. That's great. But in the meantime, I'm going to like blast the crap out of my apple tree and try and like at least control them or get the population down a little bit. Not during water restrictions, but yeah. Yeah.
Part 2 is.
Yeah, part 2. Spider mite?
Yeah, so I get them in my greenhouse.
Yeah.
Is there something I can introduce to my greenhouse that will eat them or like make them go
Good
away?
question. Greenhouses are tricky because once you have a greenhouse, you're creating a somewhat artificial environment, and you are now Mother Nature. You get a small taste of like how complex that all these systems are to keep balanced. So spider mites are tricky. Better air circulation would be one, and I don't actually know a good predator bug for spider mites. You can do sticky traps, but they tend to stay in their little nesty cocoons. Yeah, better air circulation, and better air circulation is always an issue. It's like that's the answer for every greenhouse issue. And it's hard to do. You have a fan going, you have vents open, and it's still going to be better air circulation. If anybody else knows spider mite control, yeah, I don't really. Greenhouses are tricky. To me, I thought when I first moved here, I better get a greenhouse because this is impossible to grow anything here. Cold frames are my answer. Greenhouses just seem too hard to manage. And yeah, I've just embraced growing cherry tomatoes over, yeah, big beefsteak ones. No, yeah, spider mites. I'm trying to think what colleagues have said about spider mite control.
Kids brought home stick bugs from school.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the indoor plants.
Mm-hmm. Stick bugs. Okay.
So
well, yeah. Well, maybe you could get in touch with local schools and see.
Oh, but they look like little sticks and they move around in the plants.
So I would do research on what likes to eat spider mites, and then just see if you can, and if you can't get that actual bug, which seems like a sort of a problematic thing to start like importing bugs and doing this and that, find out what they like to live on and eat, and maybe try and have that around your greenhouse. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Big fans, yeah. Yeah, do you have good ventilation in your greenhouse? It depends on the day, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's almost like it needs to have like a strong wind at all times. Otherwise, there's fungal issues or there's insect issues in greenhouses. It's so hard to regulate the temperature, cold nights, hot days. Even in my cold frames, I fried things. And that's because I had it closed for like 3 hours. And I went to the store and came home and it just got so hot in there. All my seedlings fried. You know, it's weird to think we get a hot day like under Lexan paneling, under greenhouse paneling, a warm day in April. It's enough to like raise that temperature 10, 15 degrees. So yeah. Yeah.
I have a small greenhouse and I plant right in the ground.
Nice. Okay.
But the soil is just like powder.
Mhm.
It needs something.
Yeah. What do you plant?
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes, hothouse stuff. I would say a quick, easy way to start would be to get worm castings. So that's worm poop. But it's, and then if you really like that, you can start doing your own vermicomposting, do your own worm bins. They're really, really easy to do. And it's not like outdoor worms. These are red wigglers. So they do literally have to stay inside in our colder winters. No worms are native here, but they're definitely not hardy. Start with worm castings because it's a type of fertilizer that introduces new microscopic life into the soil as well as fertilizer, and you can't burn anything with it. So it's you could try that right away. Just get a bag of it and kind of mix it throughout your existing soil. Yeah.
Earthly matters.
Earthly matter. I know there's folks in Okotoks. Yeah, there's you can start.
Yeah.
No, you can go to they sell go to your favorite locally owned garden center and they'll have worm castings. Any locally owned garden center.
Can you also do, like to have a greenhouse, can you mulch the soil so that you conserve kind of the moisture?
Absolutely. Mulch everywhere. Please don't have bare soil. If you can't plant something that will be a growing mulch, strawberries are a mulch. They spread that red creeping thyme is a mulch. But if you can't have a ground cover growing, use actual mulch or straw or dried leaves, like leave something covering the soil. Yes.
Horses.
Yeah.
And some of the bags got wet and started to rot.
Mhm.
Can I use that as a mulch?
You could. You may have hitchhiking weed seeds in there. So you may end up like growing some alfalfa or canola. Often I find a lot of the agricultural stuff has canola seed in it. Yeah. I mean, that weed seeds can stay dormant for a long, long time. So when conditions are right, they just pop up. But you'll see it and you can pull them. It's not like you'll be overrun. The other thing too for building your soil would be to just start introducing every season some aged compost. So a bagged product that I like is called Sea Soil. It's made in Canada on the west. Sea Soil. Yep. It's just a great high quality compost. If you need like a yard or more, I'd probably buy it in bulk and pay for it to get dropped off or go pick it up with a truck or something. And Western Canada garden soil, I just love them. They're just awesome. They're a fantastic local business. I love supporting local, and I bought some from them and I bought some from an unnamed soil distributor, and that unnamed one I still do battle with that soil. And the one from Western, yeah. Well, it was a bulk one and it was like I knew better. That soil is often scraped off of building sites, filtered, sold as something, and it's just super high quantity of clay.
Yeah.
So it's just a real thick soil. But the Western Canada sells a really good product, bulk product. They're in Alderside, so they're real close. So your delivery fees would probably be lower than mine. Yeah, Alderside. Or make your own compost pile and get into it. In a year or 2 years, you could start producing about a cubic yard of compost every year. Yeah, Western Canada garden soil. Look 'em up. Yeah. Yeah, but always feed your soil. That's number one. Always feed your soil. Replenish your soil. Yes.
I just have maybe a final question from the online viewers, unless anyone else had some questions. But they're asking for recommendations to control leaf hoppers.
Leaf hoppers are tricky. They often really love things like Virginia creeper. That's a vine that we love to grow because it's so beautiful, but it just hops. My hops get covered in leaf hoppers too. The best thing I've found to control leaf hoppers is spraying them with a hose. And it's a slow build because they just come right back. But get them in the hottest part of the day. They're most active when it's hot. When we're kind of not wanting to be in the garden, that's their heyday. So if we can catch them like the hottest part of the day, a still day where there's not a lot of wind, just get out there and spray them with the hose if you can. Yeah.
Virginia creepers, deer food?
I don't think deer eat them too much. If you plant anything new, it doesn't matter if it's a juniper or covered in spikes, thorns, whatever, deer will come and nibble because they're curious, but they're creatures of habit. So if they get a bad taste the first time, they probably won't come back to that plant. Yeah. So, yeah.
Called top bar beekeeping.
Yeah.
What is that?
So top bar hives, it's a different style of hive instead of the
Square.
the Langstrom. Langstrom is the square ones that we often see like so just stacked on the edges of fields. And the top bar hive is you have slits that like wooden slats that run across the top of like a trough, an enclosed trough, and the bees actually create their comb hanging down. In the Langstrom boxes, you have you put in a template. You put in like a sheet of synthetic hive, and they start to build off of that. So it's just a different way of keeping bees. It's really common in Africa, parts of Africa to have. It's like sort of comes from the idea of bees starting hives in like hollow logs. So they're noticing like how can we mimic this in a built like a manufactured container, and so yeah, it's like a trough kind of like a trug planter with a lid on it, but it has these slats that come down to a peak, and the bees just start to build their hive off of it. And ideally, if you're doing everything correctly, which I didn't my first season, everything's level and the hive just gets built and it's about that thick and they just keep going down, down, down. And when you pull the slats up, you're pulling out that comb. You can put it back in.
And can you still collect honey?
Yes, you can. I never collected honey because I had my bees for a year and then they went back to Nanton. So I just didn't want to, I was like, I don't need honey. I just liked having them around. My vegetable garden was super productive because I just had hundreds of pollinators right in it. So it was awesome. Yeah.
They'll fly for 5 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when there's water. And when you put out water, like a bird bath or like a bee tray, give them a landing spot. You can't just have a dish of water because they'll drown in there, but give them like, put some rocks in there so they can land on the rock or floating piece of wood and then kind of get their little tongues in the water and drink. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, you guys. Great questions.
Okay, so thank you so much, Joanna. That was an amazing presentation. I learned a lot myself, so I'm sure everybody else here did as well. So don't forget to check out our upcoming workshops and events on the Green Living events page. We do usually in May have a plant swap here in the parking lot, and there's usually also free compost that they give away. So I thought that was relevant today. The town is also offering various rebates for items such as rain barrels, mulch, drought tolerant plants, trees, and seeds. So I do have some paper forms outside that Cassidy is showing off here. So if you'd like one of those, you can grab one of those and take it home. The form is also just available on the website. If you're having any issues with the rebates, my card is out there. You can shoot me an email and I can help you get some money back for some of your gardening supplies. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you again to Joanna for sharing her time with us. Hope to see you guys at future events. So thank you.